At some point this year, you paid a tax without filing a form. No letter arrived, no politician voted on it. You didn't even notice the moment it happened, but it happened anyway. You went to the grocery store, you filled your car with fuel, you opened your banking app, and quietly, invisibly, something was taken from you, not by force. By math, this is the invisible tax nobody talks about. And what makes it dangerous isn't how small it looks, it's how constant it is, how boring it feels, how easy it is to ignore until years later, when you realize the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be, right now matters more than ever because this tax accelerates when systems are stressed, high debt, high spending, low political tolerance for pain. Those conditions exist right now, almost everywhere. But to understand why this tax is so effective, you have to forget how taxes are usually explained. This isn't about rates or brackets. This isn't about who pays more. This is about erosion. Picture a block of ice sitting on a kitchen counter. No drama, no sound, just time doing. What time does, that's the system. The invisible tax works by slowly shrinking the value of what you already have. Your cash, your income, your savings, even your expectations. The technical word is inflation, but that word has become too clean, too academic. It sounds like a background condition, like weather. In reality, it's closer to a leak. Here's how it starts. Money is created, sometimes carefully, sometimes aggressively, often because there's a crisis or a slowdown or a promise that can't be kept without it. New money enters the system. It doesn't hit everyone at once. It moves in waves. Governments spend it. Banks lend it. Corporations access it early. Asset prices respond first. Stocks rise. Real estate inflates. Luxury goods surge at this stage. Most people feel fine. Some even feel richer. Then, months later, the wave reaches wages. And later still, it reaches prices at the store. But here's the key detail most explanations skip. By the time prices rise, the damage is already done. Your money didn't lose value overnight. It lost purchasing power gradually, silently, between paychecks. Let's make the math uncomfortable. If inflation runs at 6%, your money loses roughly half its purchasing power in about 12 years. At 10%, that timeline collapses to 7. No crash, no headline, just erosion. Imagine earning the same salary for a decade and realizing you can buy 30% less with it. That's not a theory, that's arithmetic. And unlike income taxes, this one is flat. It hits everyone holding cash. The irony is brutal. The people least able to protect themselves pay the highest effective rate. If most of your wealth sits in savings, you're exposed. If your income lags prices, you're exposed. If you can't access assets that inflate faster than consumer goods, you're exposed. Meanwhile, debt quietly benefits. When money weakens, what you owe shrinks in real terms. The borrower wins, the saver loses. That's not a bug, it's a feature. Historically, this is how heavily indebted systems survive without open revolt. Instead of raising explicit taxes, they dilute. It feels less violent, less political, less visible. And that's why it works. Now, here's where the story gets uncomfortable. People are told inflation is temporary or external or caused by one-off shocks. Sometimes that's partially true, but long-term inflation doesn't require chaos. It requires incentives. When governments sow more than they can realistically repay through growth or taxation, inflation becomes the least painful option for them. No vote required, no angry press conference, no single villain. Just policy choices layered on top of each other until the value of money bends. This creates a strange split reality. On paper, things look stable, GDP grows, markets function, paychecks arrive, but lived experience feels tighter. People work more hours, save more aggressively, yet feel like they're running in place. That's the invisible tax at work. And it's amplified by a second mechanism that almost never gets discussed. Time. Inflation doesn't just tax money, it taxes delay. The longer you wait to use money productively, the more it decays. Cash sitting idle loses value every year. Pensions locked into fixed payouts lose purchasing power every year. Long-term contracts signed today become cheaper tomorrow for the party paying them. This quietly reshapes behavior. People are pushed toward risk, toward leverage, toward speculation. Not because they want to gamble, but because standing still guarantees loss. That's the absurd part. In a system designed for stability, safety becomes dangerous. Saving becomes an act of faith rather than prudence. Patience gets punished. And the public conversation rarely reflects this reality. Instead, headlines focus on monthly numbers, 0.7% up, 0.3% down, as if the real impact is a rounding error. But compound effects don't care about headlines. They accumulate quietly, then all at once. Zoom out far enough and you see the real cost. The invisible tax changes how societies think about the future. Long-term planning becomes harder. Trust in institutions erodes. People stop believing that effort today guarantees security tomorrow, not because they're cynical, because the math stopped working, and here's the final twist. This tax is rarely reversed. Once introduced, it becomes normalized. A new baseline is set, expectations adjust downward, and the system moves on, not with reform, with resignation. So when people ask why everything feels more expensive even when the economy is doing fine, this is why, not greed, not imagination, not personal failure. It's an invisible transfer happening every day, measured not in dollars lost, but in options closed, and the most unsettling part isn't that it exists, it's that it works best, when nobody talks about it. Which raises a final question worth sitting with in a system that relies on an invisible tax to stay functional. Who is it really designed to protect, and how long can that silence last before the math demands attention?